The story begins with a group of noble students gathers in the hallway to gossip excitedly about a commoner girl who has captured the prince's attention, while another student notes that the girl is actually a baron's daughter with a fearless attitude. In the center of the courtyard, Prince Gilbert holds the hands of a crying girl named Lala while declaring their true love as his fiancée. Lady Christina stands apart and watches them with a stoic expression. The surrounding students blush and swoon over the romantic spectacle as someone shouts that the prince is head over heels for Lala's sweet manners. Christina remains silent and composed while other students notice her strong will but criticize her for standing in the way of true love. Lala looks up at Gilbert with tearful eyes and claims she just wants him to be happy while begging for understanding from the crowd. The audience of students cheers for the couple and gets swept up in the romantic atmosphere while ignoring the fiancé's humiliation. Gilbert looks at Christina with disdain and tells her she lacks even a speck of Lala's charm, while Christina simply says his name quietly. Suddenly, a mysterious woman with long dark hair descends the grand staircase and interrupts the scene with a sharp comment about their rude behavior. She walks confidently toward the group while criticizing the script of their little drama and noting that the situation is cliché and boring. The dark-haired woman stands before them with an imposing presence and asks if her ears are working properly because she cannot believe the foolishness she is hearing. Gilbert and Lala look shocked by the interruption while Christina remains silent as the woman accuses them of performing a cheap play. The woman turns her sharp gaze toward Lala and questions her earlier statement about wanting to be together with the prince regardless of his status. Lala stammers but insists that Gilbert should have the freedom to love whoever he wants just like anyone else. The woman listens with a cold expression and asks if Lala truly means those words, even knowing that Gilbert is the third prince of the kingdom. Lala raises her voice passionately and claims that it is wrong for others to decide who someone spends their life with. The woman steps closer with an intimidating aura and asks if Lala is planning to incite a rebellion against the country itself. She explains that the royal family's marriage policies are not unnecessary restrictions but vital tools for national stability and peace. She points out that the neighboring country has not attacked because of a marriage alliance and that the paper technology used in the academy exists only because a prince married into another kingdom. The woman continues her lecture by revealing that wheat is imported from the north solely because of another royal marriage, while Lala looks confused and overwhelmed. She asks if Lala understands that the very foundation of their daily lives supports everyone, including the students at the academy. The woman reveals that she knows Lala is from the jail baron house and asks if she realizes that her family lives off pensions and tax exemptions provided by the royal family. She explains that nobles collect taxes from the people and in exchange they are expected to protect those people physically and economically through political marriages. Lala looks down in shame as the woman asks if she thinks it is strange that a nation is built on sacrifice. The woman states that there are other ways to protect the country, but unless Lala can present something that surpasses the benefits of a marriage alliance, she should stop talking. Gilbert tries to intervene and protect Lala, but the woman silences him immediately with a stern look. She asks if they intend to abolish the class system and accuses them of playing a dangerous game that could dismantle the entire structure of the kingdom. Suddenly, the woman moves with incredible speed and throws her folding fan through the air. The fan flies past the prince and embeds itself deeply into a stone pillar with terrifying force while the crowd gasps in shock. She smiles coldly and asks if they still believe that throwing away duty for romance is the right choice. She argues that political marriages are not always forced and that true love is something that changes over time, unlike duty. She approaches Lala and admits that she actually admires the girl's strong spirit and ability to charm men. The woman leans in close to Lala and warns her that the life of a princess is not a fairy tale but a rigid existence filled with rigorous education and strict etiquette. Lala trembles as the woman describes how she would have to hide her emotions and stand alone to protect the people. She gently lifts Lala's chin and predicts that the suffocating life of royalty would destroy Lala's adorable charm and leave her miserable. She suggests that Lala would be much happier living freely and using her cuteness as a weapon in a merchant family rather than suffering as a prince's wife. Lala realizes the truth of the woman's words and quickly agrees to end her pursuit of the prince. The woman claps her hands together and declares that their little play has finally come to an end. The crowd watches in stunned silence as the drama concludes and the woman turns her attention to Christina. She greets Lady Christina properly and apologizes for the delay while Christina looks relieved but exhausted. She turns to the trembling Prince Gilbert and informs him that she will be reporting his disgraceful behavior to the king and queen. The woman opens a new fan and introduces herself to the crowd as Claudia, the second princess of the Greek Empire who will be studying abroad at their academy. The students panic as they realize she is the famous ice empress from the neighboring empire and worry about the scandal they just witnessed. Claudia walks away confidently with her attendant Beryl while noting that the academy seems full of fools and predicting a busy school life. Later in the school library, Claudia stands on a balcony while other students admire her beauty and presence from below. She sits at a desk with a book but appears distracted as Beryl approaches with a tray of tea. Beryl places a cup of tea blended with rosemary and lemongrass on the table and remarks that Claudia isn't focusing on her book. He notes that she read that specific philosophy book when she was just a child and therefore has no need to read it now. Claudia smiles and admits she has been distracted because she has been watching someone in the courtyard for the past week. Beryl clears his throat and jokes that he is jealous of whoever has caught her attention for so long. Claudia explains that she has been observing a girl rumored to be an unhappy villainess who torments her half-sister. Beryl smiles with a hint of darkness and confirms that he has already begun a thorough investigation into the girl while Claudia looks forward to the new entertainment. A young man stands holding a basket of flowers while looking up at a woman with long wavy hair who poses confidently with a folding fan in her hand. A young woman with chestnut hair and pale honey-colored eyes sits alone on a window bench reading a book. She looks down with a melancholic expression as the text explains she is the eldest daughter of the Twydale Count family and is known as a villainess who bullies her little sister. The story reveals her misfortune began when her mother passed away and she stands alone by a large bed. A flashy stepmother arrives with her daughter Layla, who is only 1 year younger than Miljana. Beryl stands formally while explaining that the Count and the stepmother were actually lovers torn apart by political marriage who secretly nurtured their love for years. Claudia listens intently as Beryl reveals that the Count lied about being away for work when he was actually visiting his secret family. The Count is shown favoring Layla over Miljana, which has left Miljana in complete isolation with no one to defend her. Layla is depicted as a bright and lovely young woman, but the text suggests she has a hidden side that the public does not see. Miljana used to spend time at the academy with her fiancé Lord Eugene and her stepsister Layla, but now everyone sides with Layla. Now only the fiancé and the stepsister are seen spending time together, which seems to be the result of calculated manipulation. Claudia questions why the situation is so obvious yet no bad rumors exist about the couple. Miljana is shown living quietly to avoid attention while people continue to call her a wicked woman. The younger generation at the academy accepts this narrative as common sense, which Claudia finds very strange. Beryl confirms Claudia's suspicions and notes that cheaters often act like victims to gain sympathy. Layla is shown crying and claiming her sister became selfish, which causes people to believe her. Claudia finds Layla's survival instincts amusing and asks if she is copying a villain from a story. Beryl reports that a kitchen maid saw Layla eating many light snacks and a merchant delivered medicine made from baika fruit which provides nutrients for pregnant women. Claudia realizes that Layla might be pregnant and praises Beryl's impressive investigative skills. Beryl adds that Layla ordered several pairs of flat shoes despite usually preferring heels, which makes the pregnancy theory quite likely. Claudia states that being wicked and lazy is unforgivable and wonders if Layla thinks her only enemies are outside the house. Beryl explains that servants who side with Miljana are immediately dismissed, leading to a lack of loyal staff due to poor working conditions. Claudia expresses her dislike for Layla's methods, especially because they drag innocent people into the mess. Claudia decides she wants to approach the unfortunate and adorable young lady first before checking things directly. She tells Beryl they should dig a little deeper as she walks away with her fan. Claudia intentionally bumps into Miljana in a hallway and apologizes for not noticing her. Miljana looks shocked and stammers as she recognizes the princess. Claudia introduces herself as an exchange student and compliments Miljana's lovely smile. Internally, Claudia thinks it is a waste that such a warm smile is hidden because of a sly cat clinging to the family. She asks for Miljana's name, claiming she doesn't have many friends yet. Miljana hesitates and says that calling her a friend is too great an honor. Claudia insists that Miljana call her by her first name, but Miljana refuses out of propriety. Claudia asks if she can call her Lady Miljana instead, and Miljana agrees to the compromise. Miljana introduces herself formally as the eldest daughter of the Twydale Count family, while Claudia observes her manners. Miljana warns Claudia that her reputation at the academy is not favorable and she doesn't want to cause trouble. They stand in a quiet and peaceful area outside a building. Claudia declares that she will come back to this spot because she doesn't care about other people's opinions. Claudia says she wants to see Miljana again and bids her farewell until next time. Claudia explains to Beryl that meeting repeatedly draws people closer and asks if the meeting met expectations. Beryl asks if that brief meeting with the Count's daughter was enough for her. Claudia says Miliana is exactly the kind of young lady she expected. She describes Miliana's honey-colored eyes as cute and says they make her want a little taste. Beryl is shocked by her wording while Claudia confirms she wants to be friends with such a well-mannered lady. Claudia decides that next they will go meet Miliana's enemy, and Beryl realizes she was teasing him. Beryl sighs and says he is not enough to support her while Claudia praises his perfection. Claudia asks her capable attendant to guide her since he surely already figured out where the villainess is. Beryl smiles and leads the way, telling her to keep working on it. They arrive at the student salon where Beryl points out the seats by the window. He identifies Layla and Lord Eugene, the heir to the Marquis of Glow, sitting together. Layla is shown smiling at Eugene while Claudia wonders why this hasn't turned into a scandal. Beryl explains that the third prince's previous behavior with another woman poisoned the atmosphere and made public affection seem common. Claudia notes that Layla's acting skills and family power also play a part. Claudia tells Beryl to observe their expressions closely as she walks toward the couple. The students in the salon notice Claudia and recognize her as the neighboring kingdom's princess. Claudia suddenly stumbles and Eugene catches her while asking if she is all right. Claudia claims she got a little dizzy and apologizes for the trouble she caused. Layla looks annoyed while Claudia asks Eugene how she should thank him for saving her. Claudia thanks the heir of the Marquis of Glow while noting that his fiancée seems quite spirited. Layla interrupts and questions if they are close enough to be on friendly terms. Eugene awkwardly denies that Layla is exactly his fiancée while Layla looks shocked. Claudia says she will remember him well and excuses herself with a smile. She walks away coolly, stating that speaking when not addressed is rude and there is nothing more to gain from talking. A carriage travels back toward the palace. Beryl asks Claudia if she is upset but then realizes she did it to see their reactions. Beryl asks if she really had to let that man hold her. Claudia apologizes and says she didn't mean to make her attendant uncomfortable. Beryl covers his face with his hand while Claudia asks if her making him jealous makes him happy. Beryl criticizes the fiancé as a magnet for trouble and says it is best Miliana didn't marry him. He notes that Eugene completely forgotten the sly cat he was doting on when speaking to the princess. Claudia reveals that when she called Layla his fiancée, his reaction was surprise and fear rather than guilt. Beryl calls it the peak of foolishness that Eugene still tries to hide his cheating. Claudia adds that Layla instinctively put her hand over her abdomen when Claudia collapsed. She says this action in a moment of panic adds credibility to the pregnancy theory. Claudia declares it is time to start building the next phase of the plan. The carriage arrives at the destination and Claudia instructs Beryl to get palace-issued uniforms from the crown prince. Beryl comments that she makes it sound like a secret rendezvous. He notes that she has met Miliana several times at the arbor since then and asks if she is visiting again today. Claudia teases Beryl, saying she knows he is weak to her look. Beryl admits that knowing her there must be a reason behind it. Claudia smiles and tells her, "Bad puppy," that something is sure to change today. Claudia remarks that compared to when they first met, Lady Miliana has grown much brighter. She looks at the young noblewoman with a gentle expression and admits that she really loves Miliana's smile. Claudia leans in closer and observes that despite the smile, she can still see a trace of sadness hidden deep in Miliana's eyes. Miliana looks startled by the observation while Claudia continues to speak with a knowing look. Claudia holds her fan elegantly and mentions that she is watching Miliana more closely than the girl probably realizes. Miliana sits quietly next to the princess and admits that she doubts she could ever keep a secret from Lady Claudia. Miliana begins to tell her story, explaining that in this country it is customary to hang a black cloth at the entrance when a family member dies. She recalls that the cloth was hung when her mother passed away, but her father ordered it to be taken down while it was still pitch black. A young Miliana stands alone and wonders what kind of face her father used to have. She realizes that even if she wanted an answer, the person who could give it is never coming back. Her father introduces a new woman and a young girl named Layla, saying that this is her new mother and younger sister. In that moment, Miliana understood that her life had changed forever. A servant scolds the young Miliana for clenching her dress, reminding her that a noble lady must remain graceful at all times. She grips the fabric tightly as she realizes all the answers were right before her. Miliana forces a smile and introduces herself to the new girl, asking if she may call her Layla. Miliana thought the child was blindingly radiant and she felt jealous of the girl's beautiful red hair. She admired the adorable dress that looked like something out of a little girl's dream. Miliana smiles with empty eyes as she recalls feeling that everything she had done to be loved by her father was for nothing. Her father ignores her while doting on Layla, proving that her manners and education meant nothing to him. She walks away realizing he loved the girl simply because she was Layla. Bad rumors about Miljana started to spread at social gatherings, claiming she had a nasty temper. The other noble ladies whispered that she broke her little sister's things and hurled cruel words at her. Miljana stands alone at the party, knowing that no matter how much she denied it, her words never reached anyone. Eventually, even the servants began prioritizing Layla, and the dresses that vanished from Miljana's closet appeared on her stepsister instead. Miljana explains that she and Lord Eugene were not passionately in love, but she thought they could build a supportive marriage. However, even that was an illusion, as Eugene was introduced to Layla as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her father laughed with guests while rumors threatened the very dignity of the Count's household. The Count heard the rumors but did nothing to resolve them, even though a public denial would have stopped them. From that point on, she began accepting everything said to her because she became too afraid to fight back. She tells Claudia that she should have stopped the rumors for the sake of her house, but she couldn't do anything. Claudia listens intently and confirms that Miljana has been powerless all this time. The princess states that she has been considering if there was a good move they could make since Miljana has been fighting all alone. Claudia asks if Miljana is prepared to abandon her family and fiancé for the sake of her noble duty. Miljana responds immediately that she has no hesitation whatsoever. Claudia smiles warmly and admits that she really does like Miljana. Claudia invites Miljana to ride in her carriage so they can show everyone they are close companions. Miljana agrees and follows the princess to the carriage. As the carriage moves, Claudia begins to discuss their plan going forward. She asks if Miljana actually intended to go through with the wedding to her current fiancé. Claudia declares that she plans to have Miljana break off the engagement immediately and marry someone else instead. Miljana looks shocked by the efficiency of the plan, while Claudia asks if she cares about looks. Claudia describes the new suitor as a friend of hers who is like a rock of a man. Miljana is confused and asks if he is a rock in human form or a human shaped like a rock. Claudia clarifies that he is very rugged and has battle scars on his face that make him look fierce. She reveals the man is Philip Reisenberg, the Marquis of the Frontier. Claudia assures Miljana she isn't trying to push a leftover onto her, but that Philip is a vital figure for the nation who needs a bride. Claudia explains that Philip trained and fought for the sake of the country, and while he looks formidable, he is a warm and kind man inside. Miljana listens as Claudia expresses that she genuinely likes her and wants to help both her and Philip. Miljana decides to place her faith in the princess and takes her hand. Claudia admits she approached Miljana with an agenda because she prefers rough and rugged men herself. She declares she is not the kind of woman who would lose a battle of wits to a little sister. Claudia states that before the engagement is announced, they will restore Miljana's honor on a grand stage, which will take about a month. Later at Claudia's townhouse, Beryl questions her choice of match. Beryl points out that Philip can't even find his own bride and might sulk if he heard Claudia's description. Claudia explains that she never imagined looking for a bride for Philip, but believes he will absolutely come to like Lady Miljana. She describes Miljana's sweet golden honey eyes and fluffy chestnut hair, noting that she is a petite and cute type. Claudia insists that to someone like Philip, Miljana would look absolutely adorable because everyone in the Reisenberg family has a weakness for small things. Beryl looks skeptical and suggests that to a tiny animal, a big-bodied person might look terrifying. Claudia theorizes that Miljana is on the verge of falling apart and the only one who can save her is Philip. She imagines that while his appearance keeps brides away, Miljana will see his true nature with intelligence and clarity. She believes sympathy will naturally grow into affection and they will build a gentle relationship. Claudia suggests that Miljana is well suited to the quiet and nature-rich lands of the frontier after being oppressed by high society. Beryl teases the princess, saying she is selfish and cares deeply about the two of them to the point of being overprotective. Claudia tells him to be silent and complains that when he speaks at length it is never anything decent. Beryl presents a letter to Claudia and asks if the wax seal belongs to the Margrave of Reisenberg. Claudia confirms it is the crest of a shield from the kingdom of Brageau, but notes that the royal family should treat their shields more carefully because the seal looks like it will rust when the time comes to use it. She smiles while holding the letter and remarks that Philip is really easy to handle and such fun, while Beryl reminds her that the Margrave is not one of her chess pieces. Claudia comments that the reply came faster than expected and praises Beryl for the sweet consideration of adding a lovely citrus scent to the letter. Beryl asks what kind of letter she sent to Lord Philip and questions if helping a troubled lady is truly part of a knight's duty. Claudia reveals she simply wrote that she found a lady only he could save and told him to go propose to her. Beryl points out that at that time she hadn't told Lady Miliana anything yet, but Claudia explains she sent the letter early because the frontier is quite far. Philip's reply states that he doesn't know the full situation but will finish his work and come in 2 weeks. Claudia claims she guided things so they would naturally turn out that way and asks if it was really a problem since it worked out. Claudia decides it is time to start acting in earnest because as long as Philip comes all the players will be on stage. Beryl holds up a castle servant outfit and mentions that the royal family sees the Margrave's issue as beneficial to them as well. He notes that Crown Prince Eric is moving quickly and confirms that his sparrows have started operating and are currently collecting information from around town. Claudia instructs him to tell the intelligence unit to use the usual method because she has something she wants them to chirp about. She thanks Beryl and asks him to prepare a letter requesting an audience with the Crown Prince because she intends to move herself as well. Beryl smiles warmly and says that seeing a surprised expression on the princess's face made his day a good one. Claudia looks flustered and asks when he saw such a face while claiming the tide turns against her if he continues. Beryl describes how her eyes were slightly rounder and her lips parted, which he found precious because she is usually so dignified. Claudia tells him to stop spouting nonsense and get ready while declaring that this is a strategic retreat rather than a defeat. She instructs him to send word ahead to the Crown Prince as she is heading out immediately to the White Royal Castle of Brejo. Claudia enters the room and comments that she came there many times as a child so it feels nostalgic. She praises the beauty of the castle while Beryl follows her inside. Crown Prince Eric welcomes her familiarly as Dia and apologizes for the chaos while asking her to take a seat. Beryl formally announces that he has brought Her Highness the Princess. Eric enters wearing a deep navy outfit with gold embroidery which he chose because he heard it was the color palette the princess prefers. Claudia thinks to herself that while he resembles his brother the third prince, he has a sternness that hides what lies deep within. Beryl stands at his post while Eric thanks Claudia for responding to his sudden request. Eric sits with them and claims that if it is something Dia wants he would push anything else aside to make time for it. Claudia admits that his striking looks make it hard to see his true nature but asks him to refrain from using nicknames because they are no longer children. Eric compliments how she has grown into someone beautiful and insists there is no way she hasn't changed. Eric asks Beryl to leave so he can clear the room but Claudia refuses, stating that her attendant is always with her wherever she goes. Eric jokingly wonders if he isn't popular with the women of the Greek Empire despite being admired by every lady in Brejo. He leans in and declares he would like to win the heart of the one and only woman of the Greek Empire. He agrees to stop there for now and asks to call her Claudia before acknowledging that her visit is about their childhood friend Philip. Claudia confirms she has found the perfect lady for Philip and adds that she is also helping cleanse the filth of the Brejo kingdom. Eric asks if this is charity but Claudia laughs and says she absolutely loathes working for nothing. Eric calls her shrewdness part of her charm and asks her to speak plainly about her request. He suggests that if she wants him to value that charm she should be direct. Claudia reveals there is a workshop in Brejo that produces high-quality muslin but the current flat 40% tariff on textiles makes it a luxury item. She asks him to lift the tariffs on muslin, specifically explaining it is a fabric often used for petticoats and aprons. Eric is surprised she wants to lift tariffs just for fabric and asks why she wants muslin instead of silk, which is widely produced in the empire. Claudia explains that while demand for muslin isn't high right now, she intends to create the demand herself. Eric realizes she plans to make the thin undergarment fabric trendy and calls it quite provocative. Claudia states that if she wears it the fabric will become fashionable, and Eric understands this is what she meant by abolishing the tariff to create a market. Claudia coughs slightly and Eric offers to let her rest in the next room if she isn't feeling well. Beryl glares at the prince with a terrifying expression while apologizing on her behalf, causing Eric to note that her loyal dog seems upset. Claudia declines the offer, saying it is only temporary, and tells Eric not to concern himself with her so they can get serious. Eric sighs and agrees to continue since Beryl's anger suggests the other party is at fault. Claudia explains that muslin is lightweight and drapes beautifully, which matches the growing interest in garments made from manageable materials in the Greek Empire. She notes that women's social advancement is more developed there than in Brejo. Eric admits her argument is convincing and asks if she thinks it will catch on in his country too. Claudia believes that while Brejo is conservative, the values will eventually shift if other nations change, and predicts it will first become popular as loungewear among the wealthy. Eric agrees to the plan, seeing the benefit of exporting to the empire, and asks if she will share the sewing techniques. He decides to let His Majesty know and transitions back to the topic of the partner for Philip. Claudia informs him that the family of the lady she has in mind has a rather suspicious reputation. Eric admits he didn't know the internal affairs of a single count's household despite hearing the bad rumors about the daughter. Claudia explains she met Lady Miliana at the academy and knows she is a serious and upright person despite the rumors. She reveals her plan to overturn Miliana's reputation and expresses her belief that she and Philip would be well matched. Claudia hands Eric a report on the management of Count Twydale's domain and requests that he have Lady Miliana adopted into a high-ranking noble family. She points out that the land is impoverished but contains the high-quality muslin workshop, so the report allows the crown to take control of the territory. Beryl smiles silently while Claudia reflects that this taught her the importance of treating servants well or they might stab you in the back. Eric is terrified by how much she stands to gain but admits there is no way he would reject something that brings them this much benefit. He agrees to annul Miliana's current engagement and arrange the new one, asking for her cooperation. Eric looks at Claudia with intense eyes and tells her that as he thought he wants her. He acknowledges that to obtain her he will likely have to offer the Empire a tremendous benefit because she has raised her own value so she wouldn't be easily sold off. He also states he understands that if he doesn't gain her feelings it is meaningless, so he asks her not to be so guarded. Eric decides to deliver the letter himself to protect Lady Miliana because they don't know how the Count's family will react. Claudia reminds him that he will be expected to work hard since Philip is a crucial margrave for the country. Eric informs her that His Majesty's letter regarding the engagements will arrive tomorrow and says he will take the chance to observe her skills in action. Claudia is pleased he won't just spectate from above and looks forward to seeing his success. Claudia mentions she tried using her connections but the young ladies acquainted with His Highness were too ladylike and fake, which wouldn't suit Philip. She explains that a margrave's house without an heir is out of the question, so she was truly saved by finding Miliana. Eric notes that gratitude has already been received in muslin and jokingly comments on how women flocking around him are like butterflies. Eric smiles and says it was a meaningful time before Claudia stands to leave. Claudia bids the Crown Prince farewell as Beryl opens the door for her. In the carriage, Beryl asks why she didn't demand a bit more, but Claudia explains she only pushed hard on tariffs to gain favor with the Margrave's domain. She states that as neighbors it is best to maintain a long-lasting relationship where both sides profit. Beryl observes that she really dislikes His Highness and says it reminds him of when she was a child. Claudia looks away with a cold expression and declares that he will never be able to have what he wants the most. Layla recalls her life being perfect while living in a mansion like a miniature garden in the forest where no one could disturb her with her sweet mother and kind father. Layla sees Miliana for the first time and thinks she looks like true perfection. She realizes that she had been unhappy until then because she had been living in isolation. Miliana welcomes Layla, saying they will live together starting today. Layla notices how happy her parents look with Miliana. Layla wonders if Miliana is really going to become part of her family and feels a sense of rejection because she hates how perfect Miliana is. She compares her own limp and useless dress to Miliana's beautiful and lovely one, which used to be her favorite. She also notices Miliana's shiny hair and feels envious. Layla decides she wants a kind older sister and is happy that Miliana will join her family along with her father and mother. Layla thinks Miliana is kind and truly wonderful but also unfair because everyone loves and praises her. She admits she has always looked up to Miliana as her role model. Layla stares at a painting of Miliana's deceased mother and feels jealous that Miliana receives a kind of love she doesn't know from her own father. She notes that her own mother would never do something like painting a portrait for her. Layla decides to take everything from Miliana and make it hers because having just a sister is not enough. Layla asks Miliana if she can have the painting while Miliana looks hesitant. Layla feels a strange sensation as she realizes her father will allow her to take it. The father tells Miliana to let her little sister have it. Layla smiles as Miliana agrees even though she looks sad. Layla thanks her big sister while holding the painting. Layla decides to break Miliana's perfect image and bring her down by carefully planning and putting on an act to steal everything. She pretends to be pale and weak in front of others to gain sympathy while Miliana worries about her. Layla thinks she can't insult Miliana herself, so she will let others make assumptions on their own. She also plans to steal Miliana's fiancé. Layla tells herself to wait for the right chance because there are still things she can't take until she grows more. Layla meets Eugene in the garden during a party at a friend's house because she got bored of girls talking about dresses. Eugene admits he also got a bit tired of the party. Eugene tells Layla he will always wear a ribbon the color of her eyes so she can find him. Layla asks for his name because they might never meet again. Eugene suggests a gray ribbon like the winter sky, which Layla thinks is too plain and doesn't suit her flashy red hair. They agree to keep their meeting a secret just between the two of them. Layla believes Eugene is the man who will become her fiancé because they balance each other perfectly. Layla feels that the final piece is clicking into place as she and Eugene share a secret forbidden love. She believes that with this sweet taste he won't be able to resist her anymore. Layla triumphantly thinks she has stolen everything she could from Miliana, including the things her sister had when they first met. Despite having everything, Layla wonders why she is not the least bit fulfilled. She notices Eugene kept staring at the princess and feels jealous because he should be looking only at her. Layla tries to dismiss her anxiety as nothing more than surprise on Eugene's part, but she feels a growing impatience and emptiness in her heart. She insists her life is perfect but feels like she is seeing the beginning of the end. Two servants visit a shop to buy soap and cream while chatting about rumors. They discuss a famous noble family where the younger sister is actually the one setting up the older one, contradicting the rumor that the older sister bullies her. The servants mention that no one has ever actually seen the older sister bullying the younger one, and that before the younger sister showed up everyone said the older sister was perfect. They conclude that if the story is true, the younger sister is a terrifying villainess. They discuss rumors about the younger sister flirting with the older sister's fiancé and being spotted together frequently, which makes the situation suspicious. They wonder why they didn't find the rumors odd until now given the contradictions. The servants describe the older sister as having translucent pale skin, shining black hair, and gleaming green eyes. They decide they need to get back soon to be more useful to their lady. Claudia smiles as she thinks of her sparrows, who are intelligence units disguised as ordinary townspeople like servants. She values their voices, which resonate like ancient magic, reaching the ears and hearts of many. The strategy involves first reaching the ears of tight-lipped serious servants to let the rumor sit in the back of their minds. Then the rumor is passed to megaphones to trigger a two-stage spread, eventually convincing people it's true. Even if people don't believe it at first, a gentle poison nestles in their hearts. Servants gossip about the rumor, wondering if it could be true because they heard it from multiple sources at different times. Because they are cautious once doubt breaks, they believe it's the truth. Claudia confirms this is their usual method. Claudia instructs Beryl to make absolutely sure Layla is not with anyone else and to have someone who resembles Layla play the role of her dating a male partner. She wants several people to witness them together in the garden during the evening party. Claudia plans to watch from afar as the final spark ignites. Beryl mentions reports that the thieving cat, Layla, has been getting close to several men and wearing flashy clothes due to gifts despite her family's financial trouble. Claudia notes that the rumor they are spreading isn't entirely false. She wants Miliana to personally speak the truth as the final blow because people tend to forget details as long as the ending is shocking. Miliana is shown looking distressed as Claudia decides it's time for her to move as well to prepare the stage carefully for Miliana to survive in high society at the panicked Twydale townhouse, where the family is in a state of confusion and shock after receiving a forewarning letter that morning from the second imperial princess of the Greek Empire. The father and mother stand by the window wondering why such a high-ranking figure would visit their humble home, while outside a grand carriage bearing the imperial crest arrives at their doorstep. The servants and family members rush to the entrance to welcome their guest properly as the carriage comes to a halt and the second visit of the day begins. The carriage door opens and Princess Claudia steps out with a satisfied smile as she notes how much she is enjoying the prospect of finally meeting the fools who tormented Lady Miliana. A flashback reveals Claudia sitting inside the carriage earlier while admiring the delicate embroidery on her dress and discussing with her attendant Beryl how the seamstresses back home were jealous they could not accompany her. Claudia explains that her true purpose for this visit is to convince the royal family to annul Miliana's engagement and have her adopted into a high-ranking noble house to save her from her current misery. Back in the present moment, Claudia enters the hallway and introduces herself as the second imperial princess, while Count and Countess Twydale bow deeply and apologize profusely for their humble abode. The parents introduce their two daughters to the princess, and Claudia observes that Miliana looks somber in a plain dress while her younger sister Layla beams in a flashy gown that is clearly inappropriate for the occasion. Claudia notices immediately that Layla's dress is an old-fashioned style that does not fit her properly and surmises that it was likely tailored for Layla originally rather than being a hand-me-down. Layla suddenly interrupts the introduction by rudely asking Claudia to be friends, which causes the mother to scold Miliana for the impropriety instead of correcting her younger daughter. Claudia becomes annoyed by the family's blatant mistreatment of Miliana and decides to cut the pleasantries short to address the main reason for her visit. The princess reveals she has brought a letter directly from His Majesty instructing the family to break off Miljana's engagement so she can marry a margrave instead. Claudia spins a fabricated story claiming the king believes Miljana's current fiancé has grown too close to Layla and suggests it would be better for everyone to form new engagements to avoid scandal. The countess looks shocked by this revelation while the count sweats nervously as he realizes that the affair was already known to the royal family. The mother tries to argue that Layla is also capable and attractive, but the count stops her as he understands the gravity of the situation and the family's precarious position. Claudia adds the final blow by stating that Miljana must be adopted into another family before the marriage to ensure a connection to a ducal house, which is the king's preference. Miljana speaks up to ask if she can leave with the princess immediately, and Claudia agrees while the parents look stunned by the sudden turn of events. Miljana stands before her family in her simple dress and bids a final farewell to her father and the woman she calls mother-in-law rather than mother. She thanks them for everything until now and says a brief goodbye to Layla before turning to leave the house forever without looking back. Claudia watches the scene with admiration for Miljana's composure and concise words, which she believes reflect the harsh environment Miljana was raised in. Outside the house, Layla is oblivious to the insult and celebrates getting engaged to Jean while Jean looks conflicted and asks what is the meaning of all this. Inside the moving carriage, Miljana blushes and thanks Claudia for saving her and helping her become free from that toxic family. Claudia holds Miljana's hand and tells her that from now on she will be marrying a man chosen specifically for her and she must prepare for her new life. Miljana declares that no matter what lies ahead she will walk forward with her head held high, which makes Claudia think that Miljana is too soft-hearted and easy to fool. The carriage rides away as Claudia smiles and tells Miljana that she must do something about her kind nature or she will be taken advantage of again. A few days later, the scene shifts to a sunny room in the townhouse where the princess is staying and Miljana is enjoying a peaceful tea time with Claudia. Miljana expresses her deep gratitude for being allowed to stay there and feels such calm for the first time in a long while. Claudia encourages her to eat sweets and assures her that this arrangement is just a temporary measure to protect her from getting caught up in Layla's bad reputation. The conversation turns to business as Claudia suggests exporting chocolate to the frontier region because everyone close to her loves it and it presents a business opportunity. Miljana reveals she has researched the frontier market and knows they have little farmland for grain, so importing goods from other agricultural areas would be beneficial. Claudia is impressed by Miljana's knowledge of land management and expresses hope that she can support the Margrave Philip in managing the territory effectively. Beryl enters the room to report on the status of the rumors spreading through society regarding the Twydale family. He confirms that the first stage of the rumor about Layla stealing her sister's fiancé has spread thoroughly and even serious servants are talking about it. He also reports that Layla has been engaged to the son of Marquis Glow and that Duke Laddle has officially offered to adopt Miljana as his daughter. Claudia explains that Duke Laddle is the king's younger brother and he wanted a connection to the frontier because his own daughters are too focused on glamour to marry there. Miljana worries she is being a burden to the Duke, but Claudia advises her to be a bit greedy and proud like a noble to protect her people. Claudia emphasizes that the Duke is not doing this out of charity and expects a connection in return, so Miljana should use this to her advantage. Miljana listens intently as Claudia tells her to use this adoption for her new life and marriage to strengthen her position. Miljana places a hand on her chest and resolves to accept whatever future awaits her as long as she can protect her people. She feels that she has finally grasped the future she wished for with her own hands and is ready to move forward. The scene shifts back to the Twydale house where Layla stands before a mirror admiring her appearance and trying to convince herself she is still beautiful and victorious. However, she feels an unsettling anxiety because everything used to go perfectly for her, but now bad rumors are spreading and she cannot understand why. She smashes items in frustration and wonders where she messed up and how the truth leaked out even though she fired the servants who knew her secrets. Layla crouches on the floor in terror, realizing that her reputation is ruined and questioning how she could fall any lower than this. The story concludes with a bonus comic where Beryl explains how he coldly rejected shallow women who tried to use him to get close to the princess and finds joy in knowing the truth belongs only to him. Count Twydale's office, where he stares gloomily at a black document on his desk while noting that its condemning color stands out against his ordinary surroundings. He notices his wife entering the room and momentarily admires her swaying red hair, which he finds beautiful again today, but his thoughts quickly return to the grim reality that everything is over now. The Countess looks at him in confusion as he explains that the document is a decree issued by the royal family demanding the forced attendance of a noble. She is visibly shaken because such a summons is rare in their peaceful country, and she complains that the red color of the seal burns her eyes. She demands to know why the royal family is summoning them since the Count's house has sworn loyalty and holds no rebellious intent. The Count grimly states that regardless of her questions they must head there immediately now that the order has arrived. The Countess clings to him and asks for reassurance that their happiness will continue since they finally got rid of that nuisance Miljana and sent her away. The Count looks away with a pained expression and confesses to his shocked wife that he committed fraud by raising land taxes on his own and reporting lower revenues to the royal family for the past 5 years. The Countess screams at him to explain why he would do such a thing while standing in their lavishly decorated room. The Count attempts to justify his actions by claiming that 9 out of 10 nobles do the same thing, and he naively suggests that if they simply return the money the punishment won't be that severe. Tears stream down the Count's face as he admits he just wanted her and Layla to be happy and apologizes that the stolen money vanished into dresses, accessories, theater box seats, and frequent tea parties. He explains that he wanted to grant every wish she had, but their lavish lifestyle was simply beyond their actual financial means. The Count reflects on his past uselessness and how his greed brought this situation about because he wanted something so badly he couldn't stand it. He remembers having a simple and peaceful life like a calm spring with a first wife who was beautiful and intelligent in a political marriage of equal standing. However, his heart was suddenly dyed in passionate red when he met his current wife and began showering her with gifts whenever she asked. He admits that he ignored his previous wife and pretended not to see the suffering people of his domain while devoting everything to his new family. He embraces his wife and tells her that a life of begging for her love was sweet and filled with happiness. He declares that he cannot let go of her even if it means going to hell and does not mind if she hates him for his selfishness, as he acknowledges that it is all coming to an end. The scene shifts to the white royal castle of the Kingdom of Braccio, where the Count notices there are fewer people than usual and only the royal guards are present. He enters the grand audience hall and announces to His Majesty that he has come in accordance with the summons. The king sits on his throne accompanied by the crown prince and the prime minister as he notes that the Count has come far. The Count trembles internally but tries to stay firm as he tells himself that accepting this sin quietly is his way of atonement and speaks aloud to the king stating that he is prepared. A heavy silence fills the room as the king stares down at the Count without speaking. The king breaks the silence by asking how long the Count plans to keep that composed face and questions if he thinks they are equally guilty because the royal family failed to notice the crime sooner. The Count is confused and stammers that he meant he is prepared to atone for his crime, but the king demands to know exactly what he means by that word. The king unleashes an intense magical pressure that physically crushes the Count to the floor, causing him to gasp for air in terror. The crown prince notes that the room nearly froze solid in an instant because the spirits respond to the king's intense anger. The king composes himself and states that Count Twydale imposed heavy taxes and falsified reports before asking if the Count has even seen his domain. The Count admits he left the management to a proxy, and the king asks if he knows what happened as a result of those raised taxes. The king reveals that while the Count was busy showering his family with gifts, the children in his domain starved and daughters sold themselves to support their families. He describes how the elderly took their own lives believing they were no longer useful and accuses the Count of never thinking about the commoners for the sake of money. The king's silhouette looms over the trembling Count as he accuses him of killing, stealing, and abandoning his people just to protect his happy little world. The king demands to know what exactly the Count plans to do and asks again what he means by being prepared to atone. The crown prince interjects to mention Miljana and reveals records showing she converted her outgrown dresses into money to donate to the orphanage in the domain. The prince notes that the donations stopped after she enrolled in the academy and guesses that she asked a servant to send the money, but they pocketed it instead. The Count admits he did not even know she was donating, while the king laughs quietly and comments that bringing up charity here is ironic because that person hates charity and calls it hypocrisy. The king shouts that the Count's greed drove his people into despair and stole their lives and dignity, and questions who will lower their weapons even if he claims to atone now. The king calms down and states that since the crime is fraud and not murder, he will not order an execution. The prime minister steps forward to explain that because of the severity and duration of the tax, the Count will be demoted to the rank of baron. He adds that the heavy tax imposed for 5 years plus the underreported income must be paid back in full to reimburse the state. However, the prime minister notes that prior investigations show tax repayment is unlikely, so the townhouse, manor, furniture, dresses, and jewels will all be confiscated. He declares that all lands will be returned to the state and the Count's family will become commoners as of today. The king adds that they cannot allow a serious criminal to go free, so as a parting gift they will be given a house to live in. The king smiles coldly and tells the count that if he leaves the designated place he will be immediately imprisoned as a fugitive. The prince reminds the king that he forgot to mention the location, and the king reveals the house is located in the very land the count ravaged and exploited. The king steps closer to the prostrate count and tells him not to forget that he is the cause of it all and that the people of that land will never forget the suffering he caused. The king warns the count to think carefully about how his family's laughter will sound to those around him and tells him not to expect peaceful sleep at night. The prime minister observes that the count has fainted from the stress as the king mocks his earlier claim of being prepared. The king orders the guards to throw the count outside once he wakes up and calls his lack of preparedness disgusting. The prime minister remarks that they wouldn't have noticed the corruption if Her Highness the princess hadn't spoken up. The prince notices his father seems upset and the king admits he feels ashamed of himself for leaving the domain management entirely to nobles. The king praises Her Highness as remarkable for uncovering the fraud, handling the marriage, and proposing ways to enrich the domain. The prince notes they must proceed cautiously with reforms to avoid backlash but suspects her real target is the frontier marquis domain itself. He wonders why she wants to build ties with a region bordering the empire and notes that removing the tariff on muslin had overwhelming results. The king cheerfully advises his son to look at other adorable candidates because marrying Her Highness is just not going to happen. The king observes that the prince's expectations for a fiancée have become way too high because he grew up around such a beautiful girl from a young age. He suggests the prince is looking for someone who is not only beautiful but also intelligent, cunning, and noble. The king explains that even if they asked the Greek Empire for their princess, they would demand the entire kingdom in exchange because she holds that much power. He notes that the empire recognizes her value, which is why they won't let her go to another country while a silhouette of a woman with lustrous black hair and emerald eyes appears. The prince turns away as the king calls him a poor fool, and the prince thinks to himself that it is just a little longer now as he rides his horse away from the castle. A sunlit room where Princess Claudia finds Lady Miljana's nervousness adorable and compares her restless behavior to a little animal while Miljana feels her heart is about to burst with anxiety. Miljana is consumed by fear because her previous fiancé disliked her and she worries that Philip, the margrave who rushed to the capital to meet her, will be disappointed just like the last one. Claudia interrupts Miljana's self-doubt to insist that the betrayal was not her fault but the fault of that bastard with the loose lower half and declares that if he had been decent everything would have been fine. Beryl tries to scold the princess for her unbecoming language but Claudia ignores him to passionately tell Miljana that she is beautiful and possesses a brilliant mind. Claudia asserts that Miljana must fight back if her pride is ever wounded by some low-life insect and Miljana is deeply moved by the princess's genuine anger and encouragement. Miljana wipes her tears and agrees that her worth is not so low that it can be trampled on by a vile bastard while Beryl goes to prepare tea to help them return to being proper ladies. Claudia anticipates that Philip will be shocked to see Miljana dressed in pale blue which matches the color of his eyes and Miljana wonders how he will react to the styling. When Lord Philip arrives he looks grim and asks about the ridiculous letter while Claudia teases him that she wouldn't stop Miljana if she ran away from him now. Philip stares intensely at Miljana, causing her to think she said something rude or that he dislikes her while Claudia simply finds his reaction cute. Claudia scolds the margrave for rudely staring at a lady and asks if he lost his composure before formally introducing him to Miljana as the man she intends to entrust her to. Philip introduces himself as Philip Reisenberg and complains that Claudia introduced him in a ridiculous way by comparing him to a boulder or a demon. Claudia corrects herself with a smile and claims she called him a dragon, which causes Miljana to blush and think of fairy tales. Philip tries to explain that dragons are dangerous and terrifying creatures because he fears his appearance frightens her, but Miljana counters that dragons are wonderful, smart, and kinder than humans. Miljana assures him she is not scared at all and Philip is relieved when he looks into her eyes and sees she is not trembling or lying. Claudia observes that Miljana searched for words to ease Philip's hurt feelings and decides to send them to the garden so she and Beryl do not boil in the happy atmosphere. As they walk through the garden, Miljana worries about their size difference and tries to adjust her stride to match his so he won't be uncomfortable. She soon realizes that despite his fierce glare and large stature, he is actually walking gently and matching her pace to avoid startling her. Philip feels like he is in a dream, being able to touch her small hand which is neither trembling nor stiff, and reflects that until now his hands have only known how to swing a sword. Philip recalls how searching for a wife felt like seeking a sacrificial offering and how rumors spread that he was as terrifying as a demon causing women to run away. He had become accustomed to being feared and rejected but feels a warmth now as he asks Miljana if he can speak with her a bit more. They sit together in a gazebo and Philip nervously asks her to shift closer to him while Miljana feels comfortable maintaining a proper distance. Philip asks her to call him by his name and suggests they get used to each other gradually while admitting he is surprised that she turned out to be even cuter than he expected. He solemnly states that he thought marrying him would help her escape trouble, but he believes there are surely better men out there for her if she wants to call off the engagement. Miljana panics thinking this is a roundabout rejection but decides she cannot stay silent if she wants happiness and tells him that she found him wonderful from their first meeting. Philip lists his flaws saying he is big, scarred from battle, and lives in a backwater land with no special products or entertainment for women. Despite his insecurities, he promises that if she becomes his wife he will cherish her and protect her from everything. He finally asks her clearly if she will marry him and Miljana accepts with tears in her eyes while thinking his proposal is unnoble but incredibly sincere. As they leave the gazebo a strong wind blows and Philip shields her, revealing that he asked her to shift seats earlier to protect her from the wind passing through the gap in the hedges. Miljana realizes that the rumors about him being an ogre were false and that he softens his strength because he is intelligent and kind. She notices he smells of citrus rather than flowers and understands that the truly scary ones are the nobles with darkness in their hearts. Claudia is delighted when they return and sees the atmosphere between them, prompting Philip to leave to make his report at the castle. Later that night Miljana cannot sleep and finds Claudia drinking fruit wine by the window because she is also awake. Miljana admits she feels fickle for falling for Philip so soon after her previous engagement ended, but Claudia reassures her there is nothing shameful about it. Claudia points out that Miljana might be the only woman who finds Philip's rock-like nature and citrus scent endearing. Claudia shares her own experience, revealing that she decided to make her fiancé hers the moment she saw him, no matter what it took. The chapter ends with Claudia congratulating Miljana for falling in love with her fiancé and having him feel the same way in return. Eugene walking down a hallway while complaining that he has been summoned by his father again despite them being a distant family without warm moments. He thinks that talking to his father is depressing but acknowledges he must go while mentally noting that his father is likely unhappy about the engagement situation. Eugene enters the office and announces his arrival, but his father continues working and tells him to wait until he finishes reading a document. Eugene rudely suggests his father could stop working while they talk, but the Marquis ignores the comment and eventually tells Eugene to sit down. The Marquis gets straight to the point and calmly informs Eugene that he is being struck from the noble register and will live as a commoner from now on. Eugene is stunned and asks what his father means while the Marquis apologizes sarcastically for keeping him tied to the registry for so long. The Marquis asks if Eugene didn't want to become a commoner and Eugene shouts that there must be a misunderstanding because he never thought that way. The father explains that the fact remains that Eugene ignored a contract made as a noble and disregarded his duty without concern for others. The Marquis admits it was a dilemma since Eugene was supposed to marry into a count's family but then reveals that living as a commoner might suit him since he hates responsibility. The Marquis smiles pleasantly as he delivers the news that the Twydale Count's house fell into ruin right at the perfect time. He tells a horrified Eugene that he will make him a commoner just like he wanted, while Eugene screams in shock at the news of the ruin. Eugene turns pale and speechless while his father dismisses him by saying his decision won't change and tells him to leave. The Marquis notes that Eugene's childishness is beyond expectation and Eugene desperately thinks that he cannot live as a commoner while wishing his father would at least scold him or show pity. The Marquis informs him that the conversation is over but adds that Eugene will be treated as the family's son until the engagement party for Lady Miljana and the Margrave takes place in a week. The father warns Eugene that Miljana is now a friend of Princess Claudia and backed by the royal family, so he cannot interact with her like he used to. Eugene leaves the room looking devastated and encounters his brother in the hallway, who asks if he really didn't expect this outcome. The brother coldly explains that Eugene is just a despicable man who dragged down his fiancée and now holds no value as a second son because he isn't a knight or a bureaucrat. He laughs and says justice wins in the end because no one would want a disgraceful man looked down upon by royalty and a neighboring princess. The brother walks away after telling Eugene to figure something out until he is removed and Eugene is left standing alone in the empty hall. The scene shifts to a bright room where Princess Claudia is admiring blue flowers and comments on how diligent Philip is. She notes that Philip didn't even ask about Layla because he is obsessed with Miljana, which makes him a troublesome fellow. Claudia smiles happily as she explains that disciplining a beast starts at the beginning while looking at the massive amount of flowers Philip has sent. Beryl notes the flowers symbolize happy love and trusting hearts, while Claudia laughs that Philip sends a bulk order every day because he doesn't understand moderation. Claudia decides they should use the prettiest flowers as a hair ornament for the soiree to show everyone how close the couple is. On the day of the party, the maids are overflowing with motivation as they dress Miljana to look like a fairy. Claudia compliments her best friend by saying she will be the most beautiful woman in the world and leaves to head to the royal castle ahead of time. Miljana walks down the stairs to meet Philip and thanks him for waiting while he looks at her in awe. Philip suddenly looks panicked as he realizes he sent flowers and letters but forgot to send accessories and apologizes for being thoughtless. Miljana blushes and explains she used the flowers he sent because she wanted to make use of his gift. Philip is relieved and tells her he is truly happy she wore something he gave her because she looks just like a fairy with flowers in her hair. He feels embarrassed about saying such a line but admits that for the first time he doesn't want anyone else to see her because she is so beautiful. Miljana asks if the ornament suits her and he replies that she is so beautiful he is afraid to look away. Beryl and Claudia watch them from a distance, feeling defeated by their sweetness, while Philip suggests they head to the party. At the entrance of the venue where nobles gather, Philip notices Miljana trembling and asks if she wants to come with him to the frontier instead if it is too unbearable. Miljana feels the warmth of his large hand and his kind words reaching her heart and assures him she is not forcing herself. She realizes she is not afraid anymore because there is someone who will stay by her side. Miljana resolves that she doesn't just want to be protected but wants to have the resolve to match him and walk proudly by his side as they enter the party together. Princess Claudia stands in her room wearing a sheer navy blue dress that matches the color of the national flag while praising Lord Philip for being big and strong like a rock. She explains to her attendant Beryl that Philip uses his strength to serve as the nation's shield, which is something to be proud of, though she feels he is pitiful for arriving right when her own escort is due. Beryl looks stoic as he listens to the princess complain that royal escorts are nothing but a nuisance and that she would have preferred to watch Philip's reaction to Miljana alongside Beryl. Claudia reveals she is wearing a leg sheath under her dress because she worries about the limited options for concealed weapons in formal wear. Beryl worries about her safety but is distracted by how beautiful she looks in the dress, which features glass beads created using renowned gemstone cutting techniques that sparkle like a starry sky. He warns her that a night party is a battlefield full of filthy beasts roaming around, so she must be careful. To ensure her safety without breaking the rules against carrying weapons, Claudia shows Beryl a paralysis drug hidden behind the gemstone in her necklace because getting caught with poison would cause serious trouble even for a princess. She expresses gratitude to the crown prince for allowing her this measure of protection as it shows how much trust the royal family places in her. Claudia notes that if this were the empire she would be beheaded for carrying a hidden weapon, but the kingdom of Braccio is peaceful enough to permit it. Beryl presents Claudia with a ring featuring a silver setting and a black opal that matches her silver hair and black eyes. He explains that he got the idea from an Eastern weapon called a horn ring, and points out a spike on the setting that boosts its attack power, which delights Claudia. As he places the ring on her finger, Beryl pleads with her to be safe because the thought of her being in danger is unbearable to him. He laments that her shining black hair and pale, slender fingertips draw so many eyes, and it frustrates him beyond words that he cannot protect her in that moment. Beryl jokes that he will start dealing with men who have silver hair and no charm, while Claudia teases that she only has eyes for men with silver hair and black eyes. A knock at the door interrupts their moment, and Prince Eric enters the room to escort her while complimenting her blinding beauty. Eric explains that he could not give up the escort role to a knight because chances to escort such a beautiful woman are rare, and suggests they go celebrate the happiness of their childhood friend. As they enter the ballroom, the crowd whispers about Eric's handsomeness and Claudia's shamelessness for getting so close to him. Claudia listens to the jealous voices and compares the sound of their envy over fleeting love to a concert while noting the ballroom is lively again tonight. The powerful nobles invited by the Highness have gathered, and the topic of conversation shifts to the frontier, marked being a good place to marry into. Guests spot Philip glaring like a guard dog to protect Miljana and note that no one is even looking at her because of his fierce protection. The crowd is shocked by Miljana's transformation into a beautiful young lady who looks like a princess with a skilled bodyguard beside her. Claudia explains that nothing special was done, but Miljana used to look plain because her family rarely had dresses tailored to suit her properly. The guests begin to regret overlooking her as they realize she is a beautiful and intelligent ideal wife, and public opinion shifts to believe the villainous rumors were false. Prince Eric introduces Philip and Miljana to the crowd while Philip reminds the prince to speak casually since they are childhood friends. Eric praises Miliana as a beautiful lady who is talented and diligent and declares that she is perfectly suited for the Marquis who protects their borders. He addresses the crowd to say he would never do something as foolish as stealing a friend's fiancée, unlike a certain young lady who once did something similar. The guests realize the former fiancé, who is watching with envy, is just a fool and that the rumors about him being a hero for the week were wrong. Eric invites everyone to share in the joy of the engagement between the stalwart shield of the realm and the beautiful lady Miliana. Philip asks Miliana for the first dance and she accepts with delight while the crowd watches in awe. As they dance, Philip admits he has never been called charming by a woman before, which threw him off, and Miliana feels lucky to discover such a wonderful side of him. From the sidelines, Claudia and Eric watch the couple with satisfaction as Eric notes that Philip keeps sending flowers every day to make sure his happiness is real. Eric invites Claudia to dance to put the finishing touch on the evening by showing off in front of the miserable former fiancé. While they dance, Claudia thinks to herself that the future where she becomes his princess will never come to pass. The guests whisper about why Claudia turned Eric down previously, since they seem to suit each other so well. Philip notices that Claudia is dancing without relying on Eric's support at all because she has remarkable core strength from practicing martial arts. When the song ends, Eric asks for a second dance, but Claudia refuses, saying she cannot afford the price and claims she is searching for someone else. Claudia approaches Commander Ares, who is a devoted husband, and asks him to pull the Marquis away for a little while. Ares agrees to cooperate to help restore Miliana's honor, even though he knows Philip will be trouble if he catches wind of a scheme. Ares leads Philip away into the jaws of the watchdog, while demanding compensation in the form of Claudia listening to his consultations later. With the stage fully set, Claudia declares it is time for the final act of the false villainess to begin. A grand ballroom where the atmosphere shifts from celebration to confusion as a disturbance breaks out near the entrance and guests begin whispering about a commotion. A dark-haired woman named Layla forces her way past the guards while shouting for them to unhand her and causing the noble ladies nearby to gasp at her barbaric behavior. The crowd watches in disbelief as Layla storms into the room, and they gossip about how shameless she is for appearing here after being demoted to a commoner, while noting that she looks far more terrifying than her usual delicate image. High above the ballroom floor on a private balcony stands a dark-haired woman with a fan named Claudia, who observes the chaos with amusement and notes that the intruder has finally arrived just as planned. She remarks to her companion that the security left a convenient gap for the intruder and praises the stage director for setting up this final act to prove Lady Miliana's innocence. The guests down below worry that their reputations will be ruined if the Crown Prince witnesses this scene, but others believe this event will serve as a perfect engagement gift to settle the rumors once and for all. Layla confronts a calm, light-haired woman named Miliana and demands to know why she is being so cruel by ignoring their bond as sisters. Miliana looks at her coldly and states that she was adopted into a duke's house and reminds Layla that the Twydale Count family has already fallen, so their status is no longer the same. Layla becomes furious and argues that they are still family because Miliana always used to smile feebly and give her whatever she wanted without fighting back. Miliana firmly retorts that real family members do not go around hurting others or stealing things, and people who do such things do not deserve to be called family. The confrontation escalates as Layla screams that Miliana is the big sister and should continue to hand over everything she asks for, just like she did in the past. Layla rants to the silent crowd that Miliana stole the dress and jewels and even their father's attention, which she believes rightfully belonged to her. Layla claims that even her former fiancé admitted she was the better one and angrily asks why Miliana didn't protect those things if she actually wanted them. Miliana finally snaps and calls Layla annoying while swatting her hand away because Layla was too dull to notice that things were being taken from her as a result of her own foolish actions. Miliana declares with authority that she is now the fiancée of the Margrave of Reisenberg and the adopted daughter of the Duke of Ladel, so she will no longer let anyone trample on her honor. She physically grabs Layla's face to stop her tantrum and tells her that expecting to stay satisfied by taking what she wants is something only children believe. Miliana squeezes Layla's cheeks while explaining that adults find happiness in different ways and warns her that the world is not kind enough to let a selfish child who only takes remain fulfilled. Claudia watches from the side and signals that Layla is finished and it is time for her to exit the stage as her plan falls apart. Claudia then turns her attention to a nervous blonde man standing nearby and asks Mark Glow why his son stood by and watched Layla humiliate his former fiancée without intervening. The Marquis quickly decides to cut ties with his embarrassing son and agrees that it is a wise decision to strike his name from the family registry immediately. The son panics and tries to claim he didn't know anything and just wanted to avoid trouble, but Claudia looks at him with deep contempt for his cowardice. The guards seize the protesting son along with Layla and drag them both away while he desperately calls out for his father to save him. The tension is broken when a tall man with facial scars named Lord Philip bursts into the room looking frantic and apologizes for being late due to a supposed earthquake delaying him. Miliana smiles warmly and tells him that if he had been there he would have cleaned everything up before it even started because he is like a loyal wild animal protecting his den. Philip looks intensely at Miliana and declares that there is no reason for her to suffer any more than she already has and expresses relief that he got to speak briefly with her sister. He calms down and presents her with a box of famous chocolates as a celebration of their engagement while Miliana thanks him for rushing over to protect her. Claudia observes that the party is winding down and decides that the basement is a suitable place to hold the two commoner troublemakers where no one will care how much they scream. She walks through the hall with a male companion who asks why she goes to such lengths, and she admits that she does it all for her own personal ambition because she wants to earn things herself. The story concludes as Claudia excuses herself from her companion because dawn is approaching and she wants to have a private word with one of the guests currently locked in the basement. Claudia and her companion Beryl stand in a dimly lit corridor where Claudia remarks that she wasn't sure if anything special was happening today while Beryl asks if she has been waiting the whole time. Inside a prison cell, a blonde man named Eugene panics significantly because he had no idea Layla was plotting anything while Beryl scolds him for being too noisy. Claudia observes the adjacent cell where Layla is slumped on the floor and notes that she should be fully conscious by the time their conversation ends because she only suffered a concussion. Layla wakes up with messy hair and immediately asks if they came just to mock her while calling their presence disrespectful. Claudia stands elegantly outside the bars and calmly tells Beryl that there is no need to correct a child who doesn't understand manners since they won't be seeing each other again anyway. Claudia looks down at Layla with a cold expression and admits she is disappointed because she thought Layla was a cunning thief cat, but she turned out to be nothing more than a temperamental child. The conversation turns serious as Claudia criticizes Layla's parents for showing her a twisted kind of relationship and asks if Layla plans to live her life the same way by sacrificing her own child. Layla looks confused and asks what she is trying to say, but Claudia implies that Layla has already realized she is pregnant. Layla becomes defensive and shouts that someone like Claudia, who is perfect and flawless, could never understand how she feels or what it is like to be in her position. Claudia reflects on the nature of jealousy by explaining that everyone has feelings of wanting to take what others have and it isn't just a dirty emotion unique to Layla. She explains that as people grow they usually realize that stealing things never fills the emptiness inside even if their parents showed joy when they took things from others. Claudia points out that the dresses, jewelry, friends, and even the lover Layla stole were all things meant for Miliana, and because they were just hand-me-downs, Layla must have always felt unfulfilled. Layla clutches her stomach in despair and realizes that because everything is her fault she won't be saved like her sister was and lists the things she has lost including her voice and heart. She weeps while holding the bars of her cell and realizes that Eugene will not come to save her because she is no longer a noble and has absolutely nothing left. Layla cries helplessly and asks what Claudia expects her to do since she hasn't done anything yet, but Claudia reminds her that commoners work for a living and raise children on their own. Claudia offers her condolences but sternly tells Layla that the child inside her belly has done nothing wrong and she must protect it no matter how much people hate her. She insists that because Layla is going to be a mother it is her job to teach her child what happiness is even if it means drinking filthy water like it is delicious. Claudia delivers a harsh final judgment stating that Layla is not permitted to find happiness herself after stepping on others, but the right to give happiness to her child remains in her hands. The focus shifts to Eugene, who desperately tries to explain that he just wanted to clear up a misunderstanding, but Claudia ignores him and asks Layla how she is doing. Beryl informs Eugene that the head of House Glow has decided to expel him and there is no way to overturn this punishment. Eugene frantically screams that woman tricked him and claims he only believed her because she cried to him about being victimized. Claudia becomes furious when Eugene refers to Miliana without her title and slams her hand against the wall while declaring that she does not permit a commoner like him to address her friends so casually. Beryl receives a message from Marquis Glow and Eugene momentarily feels relieved, thinking his father won't abandon his own flesh and blood. Beryl reveals the harsh reality of the message, which states that if Eugene breaks the engagement he must pay the compensation himself, but if he marries Layla he is forbidden from leaving the domain. Eugene is shocked to learn he has been cast aside and Beryl explains that since he is unilaterally breaking off the engagement he has to pay for it. Beryl bluntly tells Eugene that since he has no assets he will become a debt slave to pay off the compensation, though the royal family will arrange his job placement. Eugene is horrified at the idea of becoming a slave, and Claudia asks him if he is really going to act like a fool now after calling his fiancée that woman. Eugene questions if he really did something bad enough to deserve this treatment, and Claudia lists his sins, including cheating with his fiancée's sister and ignoring her ruined reputation. Claudia tells him that becoming a slave is just the result of his actions, and if he had saved his own assets this wouldn't have happened. Eugene tries to play the victim again by claiming Layla tricked him, but Claudia reminds him that every single choice was his own, including getting close to Layla without ending his engagement first. Claudia stares at Eugene through the bars and tells him that if he is going to accept the outcome he must also accept the responsibility for choosing not to trust the fiancée he had been with for years. As Eugene breaks down crying, Claudia tells him it is all up to him whether he works hard to shorten his time as a slave or gives up and wastes away. The story concludes with Claudia and Beryl walking away as morning arrives, and she reminds Eugene one last time that actions always come with consequences. With the long ordeal finally at an end, the atmosphere in the room grew quiet. Beryl stood tall and respectful, looked at her and insisted that her skills had been truly impressive, but she told him that he always praised her far too much. Beryl looked at the princess with a gentle expression, noting how tired she appeared after everything that had happened. He reassured her that despite the struggle, they had successfully managed to save Lady Miliana. The princess looked down, her face clouded with doubt as she asked if there hadn't been a more peaceful way to resolve the conflict. Beryl answered firmly that there was no other way, and warned her that showing such uncertainty on her face might attract dangerous people who would wish to take advantage of her. He told her he was completely serious, and she replied that she knew he wouldn't joke about something so grave. Beryl explained that the Earl's house was already falling apart, so dusty and fragile that it would crumble no matter where they struck it. He insisted that they had no choice but to crush the enemy thoroughly to restore Lady Miliana's honor. The princess quietly agreed. Beryl continued, explaining that for Eugene, being reduced to a slave might actually give him a more stable life, and they could even grant him the knowledge to survive as a commoner. He reminded her that no matter how much help they offered, it was up to them to grasp it. Beryl then noticed something else weighing on her mind and asked if she was worried about the child Lady Layla was carrying. The princess admitted she was. She felt a bitter taste in her mouth at the thought of chaining an innocent child to a place filled with so much resentment and hatred. She knew these were just pretty words, but she couldn't help how she felt. She noted that Lady Layla seemed to be thinking things through more now, but she was still just a child herself. The princess had tried to push her, but Layla's thoughts remained warped. As they spoke, the night ended and the morning light began to shift the sky to a brighter blue, marking the start of a new day where no one knew what would happen. The princess confessed the darkness in her heart, saying she hated the worthless hypocrisy inside herself. She wanted to save everything she could see, but she knew that was impossible. She wished she had the same cold-heartedness as her brother so she could carry out what she believed was right without hesitating. She felt that no matter how much heart or effort she put in, she just kept brooding over pointless things. She admitted that casting things aside hurt her heart, and she felt she couldn't stand it if she had to keep bearing that pain. Beryl looked at her softly and told her that her weakness and softness were exactly why he was able to meet her. Beryl told her she always praised him too much. He explained that despite her weakness, she still strove to be strong, and that was why he respected her and recognized her as his only master. He then revealed that he had taken precautions. A watcher was keeping an eye on things. If Lady Layla proved truly unable to raise the child, he had already issued an order for immediate protection, with the kingdom of Brajo maintaining surveillance. Hearing this, the princess was overcome with emotion. Beryl clenched his hand tightly, feeling the weight of the moment. He declared that since no one else spoiled her, he would devote his whole life to spoiling her. The princess teared up, realizing how soft he really was on her, and wondered if her tears were from relief. Beryl thought to himself that he desperately wanted to hold her close and hide her tears in his arms, but he knew he didn't have the right to do that now. Instead, he took a firm stance and told her she was forbidden from leaving his room this morning, ordering her to take a proper rest because she had worked so hard. The princess smiled through her tears. She told Beryl that to her he was the only one, and without him, the world was nothing. She decided that since he spoiled her so much, she would spoil him in return. Beryl felt a deep sense of gladness that she had made it through the mission without injury. However, deep inside Beryl's mind, a dark memory surfaced, a vision of a hand slipping through his fingers, a memory that never disappeared. He thought about how his heart raced like an alarm bell every time he left her side. He vowed internally that he would never let his guard down. Now that he had fulfilled his ambition, his only purpose was to protect her, forever, no matter what happened. The crown prince stood elegantly in his room, handing a letter to his servant. He noted that the attendant they had discussed had finally arrived at the castle. Observing that the usual recipient had been refraining from going out lately, the prince deduced that the man must be alone, which he found perfect. He decided to step out for a bit, telling his servant to take care. The letter in question was a regular report addressed to the Greek Empire. The prince explained that because the lady bore the prestigious title of second princess of that great nation, she was required to routinely report her condition. His servant agreed to send it immediately. The prince mused that while one would normally write to family in such cases, her updates were sent to the chancellor as basic administrative updates. Just then, the prince recognized a voice in the hallway. He called out to Beryl, Her Highness's attendant, who was attempting to leave immediately. The prince teased Beryl, saying his desire to leave was written all over his face. Beryl tried to excuse himself, claiming he had just brought the letter, but the prince smirked. He asked if Beryl hated him, noting that the attendant was always so polite yet pretty rude at the same time. Beryl put on a stiff diplomatic smile and apologized, admitting that lying was a hassle, so he only did it occasionally. He claimed he simply didn't want to waste the prince's valuable time. The prince wasn't convinced and ordered Beryl to come with him. Beryl reluctantly agreed. As they walked through the palace halls, Beryl argued that even a basic letter bore the princess's seal, so theft or loss was unacceptable. The prince countered that there was no need for Beryl to bring it personally, implying Beryl was being overprotective. When they arrived at the prince's private chambers, Beryl hesitated, worrying that a mere attendant being seen there would spark rumors. The prince dismissed the excuse, stating that simply inviting someone to his room wouldn't cause rumors. He explained that he wanted to ask a personal question, not a work-related one, which was why they needed privacy. Resigned, Beryl sat down, mentioning he had already sent word that he would be late. The prince got straight to the point. He recalled that at a banquet, Claudia had mentioned having a grand ambition. He asked what she was striving for, as he couldn't imagine her letting anything slip through her fingers. Beryl immediately refused to answer, stating he swore never to betray his master. The prince sighed, noting Beryl's stubbornness, but then revealed that Claudia had actually given permission for Beryl to tell him. Caught in his own trap, Beryl realized he had to speak. He grumbled that she probably just didn't want to explain it herself. He clarified that her ambition wasn't the throne. Even as a child, she understood she wasn't suited to be at the top of the Greek Empire. The prince was surprised, thinking that even becoming emperor wouldn't be impossible for her. Beryl explained that to lead an empire, one needed a heart as cold as ice. Despite her strong tone and noble demeanor, Claudia was actually the embodiment of kindness. Her brilliance lay in turning that kindness into tangible benefits for others. The prince understood that sustaining an empire sometimes meant cutting people off without heartache, something Claudia couldn't do. Beryl tried to end the conversation there, standing up to leave, but the prince commanded him to sit back down. Beryl sighed and warned the prince that they were about to delve into an unpleasant old tale. He began by confirming that Claudia's mother was a concubine who died 2 years after Claudia was born. The prince assumed the mother must have been a high-ranking noble, but Beryl explained the reality of the Greek Empire. In that nation, with concubines in the double digits, political backing was crucial. Claudia's mother was a duke's daughter who had tried to elope with a commoner. To hide the disgrace, the emperor took her in, essentially imprisoning her in the inner palace to use her noble blood. The emperor remained indifferent to the child born from this union, and after her mother passed, Claudia was raised alone in a secluded palace. Even as an infant, she was stunningly beautiful and considered a valuable pawn, but because she never spoke, smiled, or cried, the servants eventually lost interest and neglected her. At age 4, she was found reading myths in the harem library. She shocked the librarian by critiquing the stories, noting that only male gods had happy endings while goddesses merely endured. She possessed academy-level knowledge through self-study. However, once her abilities became known, she ceased to be a disposable pawn and became a threat to the other concubines. The harem became a battlefield for the 4-year-old. With no support, she was constantly targeted. While she wasn't openly attacked, poison and accidents were everyday occurrences. Beryl revealed that her senses became so sharp she could detect poison instantly and avoid accidents just in time. The crown prince, who had grown up in the sun with kind parents, was horrified and bewildered by such a childhood. He asked how she finally found peace. Beryl explained that she was finally able to rest soundly because he was allowed into the palace as a special exception when he was a child. Suddenly, Beryl stood up and declared the story over. The prince protested, but Beryl insisted that Claudia herself had ordered him to stop there. He promised she would tell him the rest, her actual ambition, soon. Beryl left, stating his priority was returning to the princess. Left alone, the prince felt toyed with and wondered who Beryl really was. As Beryl walked away, he reflected that he was no one until that day he met her. He thought of the complex mix of suffering, desire, and duty that Claudia carried, seeking something beyond it all. Meanwhile, in a bright room elsewhere, a young woman looked out a window, wondering how that girl was doing and hoping she wasn't causing trouble again. With strawberry blonde hair and eyes the color of melted chocolate, she introduced herself as Lala, a baron's daughter from a commoner background. She deliberately acted cute, touching others and then pulling away, believing her skirt length was popular and easy to move in. However, her act hit a cold wall. A hand reached out, not to welcome her, but to dismiss her. The unseen noble, likely a prince, coldly stated that he hated foolish girls, calling her act pitiful and wrong. Later, in the quiet of the Magic Academy student salon, Beryl was serving tea, muttering to himself that he was starting to hate strawberries. His peace was interrupted by the sound of tapping footsteps. Lala appeared, sharp enough to notice him but clueless in her approach. She cheerfully called out, "Lord Beryl," prompting a disgusted look from him as he asked, "You again?" Lala announced that her real target was Lady Claudia. Beryl immediately scolded her, telling her she didn't have permission to say his name and that it was disrespectful for a baron's daughter to call the princess by her name. Lala brushed it off, calling him cold. She giggled with a deadly cute smile, teasing Beryl by saying it was adorable to watch a puppy playing with its beloved dog. Beryl, irritated, retorted that he only had feelings for her highness and told her not to get in his way. Lala accused him of just being jealous. Lala then explained her strange fascination with Claudia. She described Claudia as feeling like a goddess, someone so different that she shouldn't be touched. She admitted that Claudia had scolded her harshly, and instead of being offended, Lala had found it incredibly cool. She claimed she had reflected on her behavior, realizing she had gotten carried away by the attention of a prince and had been disrespectful to noble engagements. To prove her point, Lala shared a story about apologizing to Lady Christina, the third prince's fiancée. She proudly stated that she bowed her head, and Christina slapped her with full force. Beryl asked what Christina said, and Lala recounted the warning to never come near her again. However, Lala's interpretation of the event was baffled Beryl. She explained that in the city where she grew up, girls who stole boyfriends were usually beaten up in back alleys or left with scars. Because Christina only slapped her, Lala truly believed Christina was a kind person. Beryl was left speechless by her logic, thinking it would be unsettling to be thanked by someone you just slapped. Lala then poked Beryl, calling him Gentleman Beryl, and accusing him of jealousy again before excusing herself as break time ended. Beryl watched her go, thinking that her casual touchiness was exactly what caused misunderstandings. As he composed himself, Beryl thought about how Lala reminded him of Lady Lunaria, the fifth princess of the Greek Empire. But while Renee was calculatingly natural, Lala was just naturally clueless. Claudia then spoke up, thanking Beryl. She had a favor to ask. She handed him a note and asked him to investigate the people around Lala. Claudia explained that lately, Lala had been keeping her distance from men as per her advice. However, the sons who used to hang around Lala were now showing intense resentment. Claudia had done some preliminary investigation herself by talking to their fiancés, but she needed Beryl's help now. Beryl looked at the list of names. He asked if there was something wrong with these four men. Claudia confirmed that their expressions were suspicious, wrinkled foreheads and sneers whenever they looked at Lala. Beryl tried to argue that it was natural for them to be annoyed given Lala's past behavior, calling her a disrespectful woman. He felt it wasn't worth the princess's time to help a sugar-sweet girl who brought trouble on herself. But Claudia insisted. She felt that the intensity of the men's anger was too high for such a minor scandal. Seeing he couldn't refuse, Beryl sighed and agreed, saying his wish was her command, though he wished her whims benefited her more directly. He requested to use a shadow for the investigation to avoid his face being recognized, which Claudia granted. As Beryl walked away to figure out his next move, Claudia sat alone at the table. Her expression darkened. She thought to herself that if nothing happened, that would be fine. But if something did happen, simply preventing it wouldn't be enough. Princess Christina looks down at Lala with a stern expression, offering a warning for the future. She must never rush up to nobles or royalty. Lala, looking innocent and confused, asks if this rule exists because she used to be a commoner, or simply because a proper lady shouldn't run. Christina narrows her eyes, explaining the dark reality of their status. She tells Lala that it is not uncommon for a noble's life to be targeted. When one is born into a high position, enemies exist everywhere, even if the noble has done nothing wrong. Christina emphasizes that poisoning food is the most frequent method of assassination. However, she warns that sometimes enemies will use a disposable pawn to stab a target out of nowhere. Because of this danger, suddenly approaching a high-ranking person makes their guards and the noble themselves wary, potentially mistaking the approacher for an assassin. Christina reveals that Beryl blocked Lala earlier not to be mean, but to protect Christina. Lala realizes the gravity of the situation, understanding that she could have been cut down by the guard if he hadn't recognized her. Christina explains that Beryl chose to make the block look like an accidental collision rather than pinning her down, a move calculated to protect Lala's social position in front of the other students. Lala admits that this world feels completely unrelated to her. When Christina presses her on her lack of etiquette, Lala confesses she was never properly taught how nobles are supposed to behave. Christina is visibly shocked that Lala enrolled in the academy without learning basic etiquette. Lala sheepishly explains that she practiced dancing and writing, but never studied proper conduct or culture. Changing the subject to something she is good at, Lala offers Christina a box of cookies, cheerfully adding that she is mostly immune to poison, so she didn't put anything weird in them. Christina notices the packaging immediately. She is touched to see that the silver embroidery, ribbons, and navy fabric match the colors of her beloved homeland, Greek. Lala beams, confirming she chose the motifs, stars and a crescent moon, to match Christina's image. Christina praises the remarkable talent and attention to detail, noting that even high-end stores don't pay this much attention to packaging. Beryl steps in to check the food, confirming there appears to be no poison included. Christina takes a bite and is delighted by the strong butter flavor and the fragrant scent of almonds. Lala explains she crushed the almonds into powder herself. Christina notices Beryl hesitating and orders him to stop being stubborn and have some too. Lala teases Beryl, calling him Mr. Servant, and noting that he has a sweet tooth. Beryl turns away, his ears turning red, and quietly thanks her, admitting they are delicious. After Lala leaves, promising to bring more sweets next time, Christina and Beryl's demeanor shifts back to business. Christina remarks that for someone who looks like fluffy sugar candy, Lala is a storm of a girl. Beryl agrees, noting she is harder to deal with than the Crown Prince because sarcasm doesn't work on her. Beryl then delivers his report regarding the young lords from the tavern. The investigation found that these men regularly gather at taverns where they can rent out the upper floor to complain loudly about being tricked by Lala. Christina notes that their claims and victimhood are now clear. Beryl mentions they are still investigating the suspicious vial the men had, though they haven't confirmed the specifics yet. Beryl reveals that the group's commiseration has turned into a concrete plan to teach her a painful lesson. While causing direct harm at the academy is difficult due to security, the nobles have identified a perfect opportunity, the night party held before summer break. Christina realizes the danger immediately. The party is held in the castle hall, which implies safety, but the ballroom has many side rooms for resting. Beryl explains that if their goal is to rob Lala of her dignity as a woman, it might just be possible in those secluded rooms. Christina deduces that Barangel may have sent Lala to the academy specifically for this purpose, to be used and discarded by these men. Refusing to let this happen, Christina decides that simply stopping the plan once won't be enough, as Lala will continue to be targeted. She declares that the two of them must act directly to protect Lala's honor. Beryl agrees, adding with a smirk that it would be a shame if he couldn't eat the sugar candy lady's cookies anymore. Inside the designated lounge at the Royal Academy of Magic's night party, Princess Christina finally found a moment to breathe. She sat on a plush sofa, exhausted, noting that although she only showed her face briefly, the venue had become chaotic with students crowding around trying to connect with her. Beryl, her attendant, stood faithfully by her side, reminding her that the lounge was exclusively for her use so she should make herself comfortable. Christina adjusted her unique fishtail dress, remarking that she attracted too much attention again because this style isn't familiar in the country yet. However, she explained that when moving around, it is much easier when her legs are free like this. Beryl gazed at her warmly, telling her she looked so beautiful today that it was hard to believe she was human. Christina smiled and returned the compliment, saying he looked lovely too, more than usual. Beryl boasted that his outfit was the finest possible, tailored by seamstresses from his own workshop who take great pride in their work. A knock at the door interrupted their peace. When the visitor announced, "It's me," Beryl opened the door to reveal Crown Prince Eric. Despite recognizing him, Beryl feigned ignorance, rudely stating he didn't know who "me" referred to and tried to turn him away. Eric, annoyed, yelled that he was the Crown Prince. Beryl sarcastically apologized, claiming he couldn't imagine someone of the Crown Prince's stature visiting personally and feared it was a creepy pervert drawn to the princess. Eric brushed past the attendant and began flirting with Christina, calling her Claudia, and dramatically stating that her delicate ankles were visual poison. Christina coldly asked when he became so friendly with her attendant and bluntly asked if he had business or if she should show him the door. Eric lamented that she couldn't welcome him even a little. Christina eventually softened, admitting she might have teased him too much. Settling into the conversation, Eric revealed he had checked the official records regarding Baron JL's household. He confirmed that the family was a rising noble house that gained power quickly as merchants. However, he noted that back when the Baron was just a merchant head, he had a woman known as his right hand, who was the true talent behind his success. Eric explained that everyone thought the Baron would marry this woman, but upon being granted nobility he married a viscount's daughter instead to smooth over business dealings. The right-hand woman disappeared, and the company's momentum declined immediately. Crucially, Eric added that there were rumors the woman may have had a child. Christina realized the implication. Lala might be the daughter of that genius woman. This would explain Lala's remarkable talents, which she may have inherited. Suddenly, the sound of a scream or a creak reached Christina's ears. A maid burst into the room, apologizing for the interruption, and reported that Lady Lala had been tricked by young lords and locked in a room 5 doors down. Christina immediately stood up, her expression turning serious, and declared they were going in immediately. Eric suggested calling the knights for such an emergency. Christina silenced him, telling him not to interfere with their judgment. She walked straight to the balcony. To Eric's horror, she stepped onto the railing. With the grace of a goddess of the night, Christina jumped off the balcony. Beryl followed her instantly. Left alone, Eric watched them descend. He realized Beryl's jump was pure physical skill, proving the attendant was no ordinary servant. Eric felt frustrated at being left behind while they resolved things in secret. Determined not to be merely dragged along, he decided he had to follow. Standing on the railing, looking down at the intimidating height, Eric hesitated. He remembered Beryl previously offering to carry him, which he had refused. Gritting his teeth, Eric jumped. He used spirit magic to break his fall, landing clumsily and nearly stumbling. As he regained his balance, he sighed, admitting to himself that he should have just let Beryl carry him after all. The evening party, Lala feels uncomfortable in her body, thinking that the pink, fluffy dress her father gave her makes her look like an overly sweet cake. She feels out of place among the decorations and the lively atmosphere because she doesn't know a single rule of etiquette. Suddenly, a servant approaches her and claims that Her Highness the Princess would like to speak with her. Excited and trusting, Lala follows the servant, who leads her to a room and then quickly leaves in a hurry. Lala enters the room, but she is confused because it is pitch dark. Suddenly, the door clicks shut and locks behind her. The group of young noble lords steps out of the shadows and welcomes her with mocking smiles. Lala tries to bluff, apologizing for entering the wrong room, but they block her path. One of the men grabs Lala's wrist, hurting her. When she tries to pull away, he threatens that her father, Baron JL, won't forgive her if she makes a scene. They laugh, telling her that since they are of higher rank, her father might actually be glad if they made her a mistress. They cruelly reveal rumors that her family is in serious debt and that she was dragged back home just for that reason. One of the nobles splashes red wine all over Lala's dress. He sneers that her future is ruined and the marriage she had lined up has vanished because of her. He accuses her of being sent to the academy solely to become someone's mistress and says her innocence was all calculated. Lala tries to reason with them, begging them to stop, but they ignore her pleas. They admit they planned this out properly and aren't just drunk. The men drag Lala toward a bed, revealing they have an aphrodisiac ready to ensure she relaxes, whether she wants to or not. Lala remembers advice a neighbor once gave her. If a man tries to hurt her, she shouldn't fight back, but just endure it to survive. However, she decides she cannot give up yet and must stall for time. Attempting to manipulate them, Lala forces herself to stop crying and acts sweet and submissive, asking them to please be gentle. For a moment, the noble seems flustered. But suddenly he strikes her violently, shouting that she is just a whore anyway. Realizing that her act failed, Lala's fear turns to fury. She spits directly in the noble's face. She realizes that this man is taking his own frustrations and failures out on her because he couldn't vent anywhere else. The noble is stunned and enraged, but before he can retaliate further, a presence interrupts them and Lala gasps, "Your Highness." In a lighter moment elsewhere in the castle, Crown Prince Eric tries to chase down Beryl to finish their conversation. Beryl politely tries to excuse himself, but Eric is persistent. To escape the prince, Beryl demonstrates his incredible physical speed by slipping out a window on the second floor. Eric is left stunned but impressed, swearing that he will hear the rest of the story one day. Just as Lala was in peril, the glass of the balcony shattered. Princess Christina stood amidst the debris, her dark hair flowing, and greeted the room with a calm, chilling, "Good day." The nobles, stunned by the sudden intrusion, gaped at her, with one demanding to know who the hell she was. Christina stepped into the room, coolly advising them to be careful of the broken glass. She declared that their insolence had gone on long enough. The young lords, recovering from their shock, panicked. They questioned how she got in, insisting the balcony wasn't connected to the next room, and accused her of drunkenly barging into their break room. Ignoring the obvious danger radiating from her, they foolishly ordered her to get out immediately. When Christina and her group ignored their commands, the nobles grew irate, asking if they were listening. One lord, realizing the situation, accused them of coming to rescue Lala. Suddenly, Beryl moved. With blinding speed, he struck one of the nobles, sending him reeling. The noble shouted in disbelief, asking if Beryl had any idea how many of them there were. Unfazed, Beryl watched as the men armed themselves with wine bottles, asking if this wasn't the part where they were supposed to pull out knives. He pointed out that their numbers meant nothing when the rest were just women, mocking their confidence. Beryl produced a baton, politely excusing himself as he explained his orders were to capture them without killing them. The nobles, now terrified by his skill in such a tight space, warned that using magic in the royal castle would bring severe punishment. At the window, Crown Prince Eric finally appeared, panting. Hearing the warning about magic, he realized he did have magic and could use it. The nobles, cornered and desperate, ordered their group to beat the intruders, relying on their overwhelming advantage in numbers. The brawl was short and one-sided. Beryl and Eric effortlessly suppressed the group. Sounds of impacts and groans filled the room as the nobles were laid out on the floor. Beryl, standing over the defeated men, advised Eric not to overdo it, noting that these lords seemed unaccustomed to real fighting. One of the conscious nobles, desperate to escape, scrambled toward the open window, yelling that they had to run. However, he ran straight into Eric, who was just climbing in from the balcony. The noble bounced off Eric with a cry of pain. Eric, finally inside, looked around at the disaster and realized the fight was over before he had even fully arrived. He felt awkward, thinking he looked uncool for missing the action. Beryl, ever the diplomat, smoothed over the prince's embarrassment with praise for his radiant smile during the encounter. Eric regained his composure, declaring that this made things much simpler. On the bed, Lala lay tied up and weeping. Seeing her, one of the defeated nobles on the floor spat out a final insult, asking if these intruders were the whore's friends. Christina's eyes went cold. As the noble tried to curse at her to get out of the way, she lifted the hem of her dress and delivered a crushing stomp to his head. She ground her heel into him, silencing his vile words with a heavy thud. Stepping over the groaning man, Christina approached the bed. Her demeanor softened instantly as she spoke to Lala. "I'll carry you," she said gently. Lala, tears streaming down her face, whispered a shaky yes. Christina lifted Lala into her arms in a princess carry. As she turned to leave, she spotted the vials of aphrodisiacs lying on the bedsheets. Her voice turned icy again as she commanded Beryl, "Dispose of this." Beryl bowed his head, replying, "As you wish." With Lala safe in her arms, Christina walked out onto the balcony, the worst-case scenario finally averted. Christina carries the weeping Lala into a quiet room, her voice soft and reassuring. "All right, we're here," she whispers, cradling the girl who is still sobbing uncontrollably. She assures Lala that she is safe now and there is nothing left to be afraid of. Lala, barely able to see through her tears, realizes they have moved to a different place. Christina explains that this is her private break room and no one will be able to enter. She gently lays Lala down on a sofa. Lala struggles to breathe, hyperventilating in panic. Ugh. She tries to thank the princess, stammering, but the words catch in her throat. Christina tells her not to force herself to speak. Instead, she instructs Lala to focus solely on breathing out. Humans are creatures that breathe in without thinking, she says calmly, guiding Lala to imagine pushing all the air out of her body. Slowly, Lala's breathing stabilizes. Christina offers a cup of water, suggesting it will help her feel refreshed. Lala drinks greedily, the water soothing her parched throat. Christina gently suggests she move to the bed to rest properly. As Lala settles into the clean, bright sheets, she feels the safety of the room washing over her. However, the water contains a sedative. Lala's eyelids grow heavy almost instantly. "I'm suddenly so sleepy," she murmurs before losing consciousness. Watching her sleep, Christina apologizes quietly for using medicine and for the liberty she is about to take in changing Lala's clothes. She turns to Beryl, who is standing by, and orders him to bring hot water and a towel. Outside in the hallway, the party is buzzing with rumors of a brawl involving ill-mannered mutts. Christina steps out, the picture of composure. A noble lady approaches her, asking about the commotion and inquiring about Lala's whereabouts, as she had been missing. Christina lies smoothly. "She was with me in my chambers, as usual," she claims, explaining that they were discussing etiquette and found it hard to focus with the noise outside. She asks the lady to tell everyone not to worry, effectively creating an alibi that erases Lala's presence from the scene of the crime. By establishing that Lala was never in that room, Christina ensures no scandalous rumors will tarnish the girl's reputation. Back in the room of the incident, the young lords lie defeated on the floor. Eric finishes tying up the last of them. Beryl, holding a bottle of liquor, begins to stage the scene. He explains to a confused Eric that he is falsifying the scene to make it look like a drunken brawl. He asks if the broken window was their doing, intending to pin the destruction on the nobles' intoxication. When the nobles regain consciousness, they find themselves bound. Beryl presents them with a cold ultimatum. He summarizes their actions: attempted rape and then assault. The nobles panic, reminding Beryl of the promise that this wouldn't become an issue. Beryl informs them that their plan has failed, the knights are coming, and they have nothing left to negotiate with. Beryl offers them two choices for the truth of what happened in the room. Choice A: the truth. They attempted to rape an innocent girl, punched the crown prince, and started a brawl. This would lead to public ruin and severe punishment. Choice B: a lie. A brawl broke out due to drunkenness, and they unintentionally struck the prince when he stepped in to stop it. The nobles attempt to claim it was a trap and that Lala was involved, furiously denying they hit the prince. Eric steps forward, revealing his face clearly. "It's a shame you don't seem to remember Prince Eric of the Placio Kingdom," he says with a mocking smile, pointing to the red mark on his cheek where they hit him. Realizing they truly did strike royalty, the nobles are terrified. Eric presses them. "This choice is to decide what happened in this room. Isn't that right?" Broken, the nobles agree to the fabricated story: "We were drunk and started a brawl." The knights burst into the room, demanding to know what happened. They are shocked to see Prince Eric there with a bruised face. Eric plays his part perfectly, claiming he heard a loud noise, rushed over, and was caught off guard by the brawlers. He orders the knights to throw the drunks into the dungeon. As the nobles are dragged away, Eric whispers to Beryl that looking weak is the worst, but Beryl reminds him that getting hit was necessary to seal the trap. Later, Beryl privately thanks Eric for purposefully allowing himself to be struck to ensure the nobles could be arrested without exposing Lala. In the sanctuary of the break room, Christina tends to the sleeping Lala. She uses the hot water and soft towel to cleanse Lala's body. She has changed Lala into a soft cotton nightgown to remove any hideous reminders of the assault, hoping that when Lala wakes, she won't have to relive the trauma. Christina reflects on the rage she felt when she first entered the room. She admits to herself that if Beryl hadn't whispered that the final line had not been crossed, she would have drawn her knife and killed the men right then and there. But she knows that letting them go to the dungeon for a brawl, rather than a rape trial, is necessary to protect Lala's future. With a look of profound relief and sadness, Christina gently wipes Lala's face. "I'm so glad," she whispers, grateful that she arrived in time to save her.